السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين. إن العاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا أهل الظالمين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا محمد عبده ورسوله. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us another opportunity today to come on air and be able to talk about the belief system in Islam. The last section we had relating to the belief system Islam, we looked at what it means for a person to be a righteous person, what it means for a person to be a witness, and what it also means for a person to follow through the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Today, inshallah, we'll be looking at the essence of the concept of disbelief or disobedience, essentially. We want to look at what disobedience actually means, and we'll then take a look at the description of disobedience in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does Allah and His Prophet consider to be disobedience, and how do we understand disobedience in Islam? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The word disobedience comes from the Arabic word called fusuq. So fusuq in Arabic means to be disobedient, right? And in layman's term, if you want to break it down, you say fisk. Fisk is disobedience, while fusuq is the process of being a disobedient person. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a lot of verses that explains what it means to be disobedient to the will of Allah and the attributes of those that are disobedient. So today, inshallah, we'll look at the concept of disobedience and how does the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ describe disobedience. So looking at the word disobedience, what does that mean essentially? In Arabic, when we say something is fisk, meaning for something to come out of something into something else. So if you come out of something into something else, the process is called fisk. So fusuq would then be in loga, meaning in Arabic language, when we say fusuq, and as it relates to Islam, when we say fusuq, it means al-isyanu wa tarku amrillah. It means to be sinful and to abandon the commandment of God. To be sinful and to abandon the commandment of God. And so how do we explain that if we had previously said that fisk would mean that to depart from something, to remove yourself from something going into something else. So another translation or another definition for it would be al-khuruj an-dini wal-maylu ila al-ma'siyah, meaning for us to remove ourselves from the religion of God, from being obedient to God, and then start a new journey into disobedience towards the laws of God. So we understand that al-fusuq or fisk means that for us to come out of being obedient to God and now become disobedient to God and His messengers. Because for us to better understand the commandments of God, we have to understand the message that His messengers brought to us. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So how do we then tie this back to the message that God has sent to all of mankind? In the Quran, God gives us a lot of different verses to try to help us understand what it means for a person or group of people to be disobedient. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, the 5th chapter of the Quran, verse 47, God tells us there about the story or a requirement for the people of the gospel. And we know that the people that hold the gospel are the Christians. They are our siblings in faith. So God tells them, He gives them a ruling that they're supposed to follow in the Quran. Allah tells them, says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلْيَحْكُمْ أَهْلُ الْإِنْجِيلِ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Allah tells the people that are holding the gospel, meaning the message that Prophet Isa, Jesus, brought to them. Allah tells them in the Quran, He says, if they claim to be people that are on the right path, فَلْيَحْكُمْ أَهْلُ الْإِنْجِيلِ, those that are the people of the gospel, they should judge بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ, with what God has revealed in their gospel. They should judge with what God has revealed in their gospel, because we see that many things that the people of the gospel do today is not in accordance with the rules of God, the commandments of God in their gospel. So God tells them here, وَلْيَحْكُمْ أَهْلُ الْإِنْجِيلِ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ. The people of the gospel should make decisions, they should judge with what God has revealed in their book, meaning in the gospel, that has not been changed, meaning when it was not changed. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, whoever does not make decisions or judge with what God has revealed, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. These are the people that are the disobedient people. These are those people that are disobedient to the will of Allah. So we ask ourselves this question. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that for us to be obedient, we have to make decisions and we have to judge by His rulings, by His commandments in the book, and whoever does not judge by God's commandment in the book, then that person is not a part of those that have submitted themselves wholeheartedly to the laws of God. So let's take a look at ourselves and take a look at how we live our lives today and the different ways that we, for the most part, go against the commandment of God. God clearly tells us to don't do this, and we see ourselves doing it. And sometimes we've heard this a lot, when someone will tell you, "Well, this is my life. I decide what I want to do. I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to listen to the Quran. The Quran was revealed, more than 1,400 years ago. So they think that the Quran is not compatible to their current lifestyle and to what's happening today. They forget that the God that's the creator is the God that created what happened yesterday. He's the God that has control over it. He's the God that also creates what's happening today. He's the God that has control over it. And the tomorrow that's going to happen that we don't know, He is the God that also has power and dominion over tomorrow. So His laws kind of span through all of that. For us to better understand what it means to be faithful, it means that we have to submit to the will of God. It does not matter if it's yesterday, today, or tomorrow. Whatever God has revealed in the Quran is what we follow as believers. And God tells us here, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Those that do not judge, they do not take the word of God and the commandment of God as the baseline for their decision making, these are the people that are the disobedient people. So I want us to start kind of like relax and, sit back and just start thinking about it. How many times have we made decisions in our lives and we knew for a fact that those decisions that we made were not in accordance to the rule of God? We know that God has said, do not do X, Y, Z. And then when we wanted to make our decision, because we felt as though that commandment of God was not suitable to us, guess what? We decided to change it. We decided to do whatever we felt as the right thing to do. We forgot that the God that we worship is the God that follows through with what happened yesterday. He's the God that has dominion over today, and He's the God that also has control and dominion over tomorrow. Again, for us to just pay attention to these little things in our life and how they can easily change our status from being a believer into a disobedient person or an unbeliever. In Surah Al-Hashir, Surah 59 of the Quran, God also tells us there, when He's in Surah 59 verse 19, He also tells us there in this verse that explains what it means to be a Muslim and following through with the commandment of God and His admonition. When God tells us that, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha, those that believe, fear Allah and make sure that you're cautious of what you put forth for tomorrow. Be cautious of what you put forth for tomorrow. And be cautious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's aware of the things that you do. Then God follows that verse with this verse 19 when He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. God tells us, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. We should not be like those that have forgotten our Creator. We have forgotten God. فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. And in that same process, we forgot ourselves. We forgot God. We did not give God His due rights, right? And with that, we've forgotten ourselves. God says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. So when we forget the rights of God, and we don't give God what's due unto Him, that same action would lead us for us to also forget our own self. And when we do forget ourselves, we forget the rights of God, and then we forget ourselves, guess what? We become among those that are disobedient. God says, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. This set of people are those people that are disobedient to the will of God. So for us to better understand what disobedience means, and we're talking about fasik, we're trying to explain the concept of disobedience. There's a difference between an unbeliever and a believer. An unbeliever is a person that either they've not heard the message of the prophets or no message has been sent to them. That's an unbeliever. Or they blatantly say, we're not going to believe at all. We're not going to believe at all. However, a fasik is a person that actually has believed. They believe, however, they decide to be disobedient. They know for a fact that the Creator is one God and is the only God worthy to be worshipped. They know for a fact that He has sent all of these messengers. However, whenever the messengers will tell them, these are the commandments of God, these are the laws of God, they decide not to follow those laws of God. So they become disobedient. They know the truth, but they decide not to follow it. So two different things. So it's like more like a munafiq, a hypocrite, a person that they know the truth, they pretend to be following the truth whenever they're with the believers, and when they go away from the believers, when they retreat from the believers, they start doing the things that our unbelievers will do. They know the truth, they become disobedient upon the rules of Allah, the commandment of Allah. And the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha, she explained in one of the hadiths that the Prophet ﷺ had told us that, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, من نذر أن يطيع الله فليطيع. Whoever wishes to follow Allah, whoever had made it obligatory upon themselves to follow God, they should go ahead and follow God. If they've decided that they're going to follow God, they should go ahead and follow God. وَمَنْ نَذَرَ أَنْ يَعْصِيَ فَلَا يَعْصِيَ. Then whoever has decided, they made a promise to themselves that they're going to be disobedient to God, they should not. They should not, because at the end of the day, they're going to throw themselves in a lot of problems. And that's what we're trying to save them from. The deen, the religion, is trying to save us from throwing ourselves into a lot of problems and coming into the will of God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. So I hope that I've been able to kind of explain a little bit what disobedient means, and then we'll give you the sifat, the description of disobedience, inshallah. So we're going into the description of disobedience, which is called sifatul fasiqin. Sifatul fasiqin, meaning the description of those that are the disobedient people, the wrongdoers. They know for a fact what truth is, however, they decide not to follow through with it. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2 of the Quran, verse 27, God tells us there when He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, الذين يقولون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَنْ يُوصَلَ وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. So the verse before this talks about the different ways that God would give examples to people. And فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, those that believe, that example, they would follow through with it. They will understand it. Those that do not believe, they would say, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَيَقُولُونَ مَاذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِهِ هَذَا. Those that do not believe, ماذا أراد الله به مثلا, those that do not believe, they'll say, what does God have to do with this? What does God mean by this example that he's posing? Posing an example about a bird or a fly or an ant. What does that even have to mean? كذلك يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ, God would send people astray this way, and he would guide people to the right path. And the fasiq are the ones that will be led astray. And God tells us in this verse who the fasiq is. He says, الَّذِينَ يَنقُضُونَ عَهْدَ اللَّهِ. The fasiq are the people that they break their covenant with God. They break their covenant with God. الَّذِينَ يَنقُضُونَ عَهْدَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مِيثَاقِهِ. After they've constructed that covenant, they go to break it. So they have a covenant with God, and then they go to break that covenant with God. That's one. And God says, وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَنْ يُوصَلَ. And they go and sever what God has made commanded that we should join together. So the things that God had commanded that we should join together, they go to sever it deliberately. And the third one, وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, and they cause corruption on earth. So God gives us three indicators or three elements for us to be able to identify who the disobedient people are, for us to be able to understand who the fasiq are or mufsidun are. He says, number one, they are the people that they break their covenant with God after they've drafted it or after they've constructed it, they've held on to it. So what does that mean? It means that once we've submitted to the will of God, once we testify that we're going to worship only one God, and we're not going to go back from worship, and we're not going to go back to worshiping idols, we're not going to go back to worshiping our own selves and our own ego and our self-desires, then we turn around and break that covenant, meaning we go back and do the things that we've just testified that we're not going to do. If we become believers and we state that God is one God and there's no other God beside him, and then we take our own self-desire above God's laws, then we're saying that we are more superior to God. We've taken ourselves as God. Have you seen, God is asking us a question, have you seen those that have taken their heart desires, their own selfish desires, as their own God? Meaning they want to fulfill what they feel is right without following the commandment of God. So that's number one indicator of who a disobedient person is. Then God then said, وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَنْ يُوصَلَ. The other thing that they do is that they sever, meaning they break or they tear apart the things that God had ordered us to bring together. Mathalan, for example, the ties of kingship. God has made it very, very important for us to hold fast and cling onto our kingship, the ties of kingship. So if we're doing anything to break our family members or to tear our family members apart or to put enmity within families, that's going against the will of Allah. God tells us in the first verse of Surah An-Nisa when he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha, ya ayyuhan nas, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, ya ayyuhan nas taqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawja wa batha minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa wa taqullaha alladhi tasaaluna bihi wal arham. Hadha mawdu shahid, wal arham. So God tells us here that all mankind, be cautious of God that had created you from one soul, Adam, and from him he had extracted his spouse, Hawa. And from both of them, وَبَثَ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. And from both of them, he had raised up many men and women. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامَ. And we should be fearful of God, we should be mindful of God, in him who we ask him of things of. Wal arham, we should be mindful of God, we should be cautious of him not to sever the ties of kingship. That's it here. God tells us the same thing. وَيَقْطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ وَأَنْ يُوصَلْ وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. The companion of the Prophet ﷺ explains this phrase as though what it means to be, what God means here is that those that sever the ties of kingship and the things that God had asked us to join together, they're looking for ways to deliberately split them apart, right? And then the third indicator is when God says, وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ, those that cause corruption on earth. Whatever way the corruption takes, these people, they are not holding on to the belief system that God has asked everyone to hold on to hacking on to. God has told us that we should hold on to him if we believe in him. If we then go into the world and we're causing corruption and we're killing people and we're violating other people's rights and we're stealing from people and we're trying to cheat people, again, we're not exercising, we're not demonstrating what it means to be a true believer. These three elements or these three characteristics that God has identified in this verse, God says these are the losers. So the munafiq eventually will become the losers. May Allah not count us among them, inshallah. The munafiq will eventually become the losers. And in another surah in the Quran, Surah 32, God explains what it means to be a believer and what it means to be a munafiq, which essentially is a disobedient person, a fasiq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us when it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, أَفَمَنْ كَانَ مُؤْمِنًا كَمَنْ كَانَ فَاسِقًا لَا يَسْتَوُونَ. Is a believer, can a believer be compared to an unbeliever? No, can a believer be compared to a disobedient person? So the disobedient person does not mean that he's not a believer, he or she is not a believer. They're actually a believer, but they're outrightly disobeying God. They know it, but they do, and they're still going ahead to do it. أَفَمَنْ كَانَ مُؤْمِنًا كَمَنْ كَانَ فَاسِقًا لَا يَسْتَوُونَ. Is a believer the same, or can a believer be compared to a disobedient person? God says لَا يَسْتَوُونَ. They're not the same. So he goes to distinguish both of them, and he put this distinction in the hereafter, not today, in the hereafter, not in this life, in the day of judgment. He tells us, أَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْمَأْوَى نُزُلًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. أَمَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those that believe in God, those that have faith, that believe in God, and they've done a lot of righteous deeds, فَلَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْمَأْوَى. They will have a garden as a place of refuge. Nuzulan, a place where they will be staying in the day of judgment. بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, because of what they've done on earth. Because they've done a lot of righteous deeds, they will be placed in a garden that would be a place of refuge for them, which would be their own paradise. Then God switches gears here. Then he says, وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فَسَقُوا. And for those who are disobedient, they know the truth. They have previously testified to it. However, they decided to be disobedient to God. They disobeyed God's law while knowing it. وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فَسَقُوا فَمَأْوَاهُمُ النَّارُ. Their own residence will be the fire. May God save us from fire. فَمَأْوَاهُمُ النَّارُ. Their residence will be the fire. كُلَّمَا أَرَادُوا أَن يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا. And whenever they attempt to come out of it, to emerge from hell, أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا, they will be pushed back into it. SubhanAllah. Imagine that. So there's no going back from it. كُلَّمَا أَرَادُوا أَن يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا. Whenever they want to or they attempt to come out of hell, they will be pushed back, they will be sent back into it. وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ. And it will be said to them, ذُوقُوا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Taste the punishment of hell, الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ, that you used to deny when you were on earth. ذُوقُوا عَذَابَ النَّارِ ذُوقُوا عَذَابَ النَّارِ الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ. Taste the punishment of this hell that you used to deny when you were on earth. So when we believe in God, we have a responsibility to hearken upon the truth that God has sent his prophets with. Because at the end of the day, our societies would encourage us to be disobedient. Our societies would make things so hard for us that if our faith is not strong enough, we start compromising on the laws of God. What if at that point in time, when we're disobeying God, that's when he then takes our life away? That's when he then takes our life away. What would we do? So we should be fearful of God. We should be mindful of him. Because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to listen. We have a responsibility to obey. We have the responsibility to follow the commandment of God and that of the prophet that he sent to us. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he would usually admonish his companions and he would tell them about the laws of God, for them to follow God and obey him. The one time, he told them about one of the laws of God, and they knelt down and they felt as though this was becoming too much for them. They didn't say that they're not going to do it. They just felt as though it will be hard for them to meet that requirement. Then he tells them, say, we've listened, we've heard, say, we've heard, and we do accept. Then God will make it easy. If you state that you've heard the laws of God and you accept it, God will make it easy for you, inshallah. And in this world that we live in, as individuals, we have parents, we have family members, we have people that have authority over us. And sometimes we feel as though we have a responsibility to obey them. That's fine. That's all fine. We do have a responsibility to obey them. Even the Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith that was narrated by many companions of the Prophet. Even Ibn Umar, the son of Umar bin Khattab, he also narrated this hadith. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ told them, As-samu wa ta'at haq. For you to listen, it's obligatory upon you as a believer to listen and obey your rulers. So the people that have authority over you could be your father, your parent, your spouse, your teacher, the president of your country. You have a responsibility to obey them, to listen and obey. As-samu wa ta'a haq. It is obligatory upon a believer to listen and to also obey. Man lam yumar bil ma'siyah. Whatever has been commanded, as long as we're not commanded to disobey God. As long as we're not commanded to disobey God. فَإِذَا أُمِرَ بِمَعْصِيَةٍ. And then when we're commanded by those that are superior, or those that have power over us, or those that rule us, فَإِذَا أُمِرَ بِمَعْصِيَةٍ. If we're commanded to do something that would be disobedient to God, فَلَا سَمَعَ وَلَا طَاعَةَ. There's no listening to that, and there's no obeying that. We are ordered to obey and listen, especially when it does not go against the laws of Allah. If it goes against the laws of Allah, what then happens? We do not listen to that authority. Even in the Quran, God tells us in the Quran that if our parents guide us to the wrong path, فَلَا تُطِيعُهُمَا. We should not follow them. وَصَاحِبُهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. And we should live with them on this earth with respect. So you don't disrespect the ruler or the person that have authority over you. You treat them with dignity and respect. However, you do not listen to them and you do not obey them when they command you to become disobedient to the will of God or to the commandment of God. Again, this is to help us understand our religion. This is to bring us to the forefront of what it means to be faithful to the will of God and what it means to demonstrate faith in our day-to-day lifestyle. I wanted to share one more verse with us in the Quran, and this verse is captured in Surah Al-Ibrahim, Surah 14 of the Quran, verse 22. This verse is very, very important because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the conversation of the devil, what the devil, the Satan himself, what he would say in the last day, in the day of judgment, when they're being judged and everyone has been, the believers have gone into paradise and the unbelievers have been chased into hell. In Surah Ibrahim, verse 22, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَوَعَدتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ مَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخِكُمْ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِيَّ إِنِّي كَفَرْتُ بِمَا أَشْرَكْتُمُونِي مِنْ قَبْلُ إِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. This is the beauty of Islam, because God tells us what had happened in the past. He explains and demonstrates to us what's happening now, and he also tells us what would happen in the future. This verse explains what would happen in the future on the last day, the day of judgment. God says, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ. And the Satan would say when the matter has been concluded, meaning when God has made the final judgment, the believers had gone to paradise and the unbelievers are ushered into hell. The devil would then say, the Satan would then say to the unbelievers that would be with him in hell, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ. God has promised you, and his promise was the truth. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. And I also promised you, however I betrayed you. So the devil is saying that he also promised people on earth to disobey God, do things that are not that do not conform with the commandment of God, to follow their heart desire, to follow what everybody else is doing on earth. But akhlaftukum. But guess what? He betrayed them. He's now saying, God has promised you the truth. I also promised you, however, I betrayed you. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I did not have, the devil is now saying, is going forward to say that I don't have any authority over you except that I invited you to be disobedient and then you responded to me, meaning you followed me. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I didn't have any power over you. I didn't have any authority over you. I only invited you to become disobedient, and guess what? You followed me. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not blame me on this day. You should blame your own self. Because again, God is telling us here that the devil does not have any authority over us. He can suggest things. He can try to invite us to do wrong. However, he does not compel us. God has not given the devil the power to compel us to do evil. When we do evil or we become disobedient, it's on us, because the devil demonstrates here that he does not have any power to control us. He can only invite us to do evil. If we then do it, it's on us at that point. Then he tells us, فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Do not blame me, rather you should blame yourself. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ مَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخِكُمْ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِيَّ. I cannot come to your aid today. I cannot help you today. I cannot save you from hell today. And you can't help me either. You can't save me from hell today. إِنِّي كَفَرْتُ بِمَا أَشْرَكْتُمُونِي مِنْ قَبْلُ. The devil then says, I deny your association of me with Allah before. So whatever you did, however you have associated partners with Allah, is either you worship other things that were created, either you worship other humans, either you took your own ego as your own God or your heart desire as your God. God, the devil tells you here, Inni kafarutu bima ashraktum min qabl. I disassociate myself with you, with whatever you have held as association with God. Inna zalimina lahum adhabun alim. Right? Definitely the wrongdoers. And when we say zalim here, it captures the kafir, the munafiq, and the fasik that we're talking about. Inna zalimina lahum adhabun alim. Definitely, indeed, for the wrongdoers, there is a painful punishment that's waiting for them in the day of judgment. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and make us understand the religion and not make us among the disobedient people, inshallah. ربنا لا تجعلنا من الفاسقين يا رب العالمين واجعلنا من الصالحين. We ask God to count us among the righteous people, those that are striving to do good day in, day out, and whatever mistake or sin that we've committed, we ask God to forgive us those sins, inshallah. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Inshallah, alhamdulillah, I'm going to open up the line for questions. If we have any questions, inshallah, we can ask questions for clarity. But if not, we can go ahead, inshallah, and end today's section. Assalamu alaikum. Any questions, please? Assalamu alaikum. Any question? Assalamu alaikum. Any question? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. If we don't have any question, inshallah, we can go ahead and end today's section. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the opportunity to be able to share knowledge within ourselves today. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in goodness. He is a God of grace, He is a God of bountiful mercy. He is a God that gives life in abundance, and He is a God that takes it. He is a God that guides people to the right path. We ask Him to make our hearts and our family's heart and our feet firm in the religion. ربنا ثبت قلوبنا على طاعتك. ربنا أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. ربنا قم لنا ولا تكن علينا. ربنا انصرنا نصرا عزيزا. ربنا افتح لنا فتحا مبينا. ربنا زدنا ولا تنقصنا. يا عزيز يا غفار يا رب العالمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين. السلام.